Out of Ottawa, and that is that the federal government has decided to expel the diplomat, the Chinese diplomat, who CSIS intelligence from 2021 implicates in targeting Tory MP Michael Chong and Michael Chong's family. Here's how the announcement and reaction unfolded on the Hill today.
The government of Canada has declared the individual in question today, a diplomat from China, Mr. Zhao Wei, persona non grata.
It shouldn't have taken this long. It shouldn't have taken 2 years for the government to make this decision when they became aware that members and their families of the House of Commons were being targeted by the PRC.
It is appalling that it has taken the government 2 weeks to do what they should have done a very long time ago.
The man who made that announcement in the House of Commons, Foreign Affairs Parliamentary Secretary Rob Oliphant, is with us live now. Mr. Oliphant, good to see you. Thank you very much for making the time.
Thanks, Vassy. Good to be here.
Your government and the Prime Minister specifically said they weren't aware of this intelligence, this information, until it became public through the Globe and Mail's reporting. That was over a week ago. Why did it take a week for your government to make this decision to expel the diplomat in question?
So I would say to both my colleagues who also spoke just prior to me that it did take a week, and we found out last Monday of this report that Minister Joly became very aware of it on that day. And since then, we have taken the steps that are appropriate for a Minister of the Crown to take when you're declaring a diplomat persona non grata. We take it very seriously. To throw someone out of the country is something that people are watching, and you want to make sure that you do it appropriately. Canada's a country of the rule of law. Of course, she has the power to do it at any time, but she also has the responsibility to do due diligence, to take great care, and to make sure that as she is declaring someone persona non grata, that it's the right thing to do and at the right time. And so today, she announced that he would be sent out of the country, and I think it's the right decision at the right time.
So what makes it the right decision then, and what makes this the right time?
I think what happened was last week it was revealed, and then that an agent of the Chinese government was working in Canada and had targeted a member of Parliament, and it's part of an interference program that we have been looking at for a number of years. The reality is that we have taken a number of steps to counter that interference, and we are doing that diligently. What happened last week was a report surfaced that was a CSIS report that had not been brought to the attention to the Minister of Foreign Affairs. The Prime Minister said that should not happen, that ministers should be aware of what is in a CSIS intelligence report. However, when it did come to light on Monday, the Minister immediately took the steps to say, what are the ramifications, what are the implications of doing this? And there's sort of twofold. One, we want to make sure that we're a credible ally and partner to all countries, and that if we are sending a diplomat packing, we have the right reason to do it, and we do it with care. We also wanted to send, as immediately as possible, a strong message to China: we will not tolerate their interference, not only just with a member of Parliament, but with any Canadian. And so it did take a week, not 2 weeks, as someone said, or not 2 years, as someone else said. It took a week, and that, I think, is an important length of time to make sure we're doing the right thing. And so that happened today, and that diplomat will be sent packing, and he has 5 days to leave the country, and he will be out of the country very shortly.
I did say that it takes a week, and just to be clear, Mr. Oliphant, what exactly do you think you are showing China? And I ask because the minister was, very forthright in saying last week that your government was weighing the consequences and named another number of potential economic consequences, industries like pork and canola, for example. Why is that assessment part of what your government was considering? Like, shouldn't the punishment fit the crime?
Well, the reality is that China often reacts very strongly to anything that they sense is an affront to them. We expect this is an affront to China. We are sending one of their diplomats home. And we're not naive. Especially since Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig were arbitrarily detained in China, we are very careful about protecting Canadian citizens. So if we expel a diplomat, there could be ramifications. There could be diplomats expelled. We need our diplomats in China to help with consular affairs. We have a number of issues that need to go on. Real people with real lives at stake. We have to make sure that we can deliver that care. China will respond, I'm sure, in some way, but I also think the response we're looking at from China is one of seeing our strength. They're going to look at this and say, they have overstepped, and we want to make it very clear that we have seen that they've overstepped, and we want them to step back. That's the real response that we want from China.
So again, I'm unsure of why you had to hesitate to make that decision. If that was the message that you wanted to clearly send, why did it take 7 days to decide to send it? I know you're weighing things out. I understand that, but you just said very, very straightforward. We knew China would retaliate. They are going to retaliate. So you made that assessment very early. I think anyone really would probably make the same assessment. And so in the interim, China had 7 days to watch your government kind of hem and haw about whether or not you would react to one of our own parliamentarians being targeted by a diplomat on Canadian soil.
And every Canadian is watching, and they know that we're a country of the rule of law, and we believe in a fair and just system. We also know countries around the world are watching and making sure that Canada is a dependable partner. We do those things. We also want to make sure that Canadians in China are protected. Those are the kinds of steps that the minister looks at. We look at the ramifications. You weigh that out and make sure that you're doing the right thing. 1 week is not long in diplomatic world, and it's certainly not long in the world of government to make a decision. She's acted strongly. She's acted well, and I think that Canada has sent a strong message to China, and they're going to see that this is a strong position, and we will continue to defend the rights of Canadians and ensure that interference doesn't take place.
I just have a few seconds left, Mr. Oliphant. So you spoke there about wanting to mitigate the damage for Canadians who are in China. Has anything been done to that effect? Like, was there an action taken in the interim in the last 7 days to mitigate that, or was it just a decision-making process that your government underwent here in Canada?
I won't get into all of that. The reality is we saw 2 Canadians arbitrarily detained in China because we were following what we need to do on an extradition process. That is the reality of a learning that Canada has. We have seen the consequences of how China might react. So we take this very seriously. We want to make sure that we do the right thing at the right time, and we've acted. We will do everything we can to keep Canadians safe here in Canada and abroad if they're in China or anywhere. We're also sending a message to any other country that might want to interfere and go well beyond their scope as diplomats in this country. They should watch out, they should tread carefully and make sure they do not counter the Vienna Convention and their responsibilities as diplomats accredited to Canada.
I certainly take your point, Mr. Oliphant, about what you hope to do, but I asked the question about whether there were any efforts tangibly made in the last 7 days to help out Canadians or mitigate, whatever China might do against Canadians in China, because you used it as evidence for how long it took your government to make the decision. You said you didn't want to get into that. Why is that?
Well, we have a fine embassy in Beijing. We have consulates scattered out throughout China. They are responsible for ensuring that Canadians are safe. They have consular facilities that they will do. We want to make sure that Canadians are safe, and to do that, we need to have the best diplomats in China, and we do.
Okay, Mr. Oliphant, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rob Oliphant is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of